What would you do if you discovered your husband's secret family completely by accident? Elena only went to the mall for lunch with her friend. Minutes later, she was secretly taking photos of her husband holding another woman's child, a little boy calling him daddy. But the deeper she looked, the more horrifying the truth became. And trust me, the final revelation in this story is something nobody sees coming.
It was like watching my own life derail in slow motion. That night, my best friend Sarah practically forced me to a modern art benefit in Miami. She insisted I needed a break from the pressure cooker our house had become. My son, Leo, who's 17, had been locked in his room for weeks, finishing a coding project for his MIT application, and the stress was suffocating. So I went. What harm could one night do? I never dreamed a few glasses of champagne and some abstract art would completely shatter my world. We were admiring a sculpture when Sarah nudged me, debating a bid on an Aspen ski trip. And that's when I saw him across the gallery, and my heart just stopped. It was my husband, Marcus Thorne, wearing the unique gold lapel pin we'd designed for our 15th anniversary. He was holding a small boy, maybe 4 years old, whose little arms were wrapped around his neck, letting out a peal of pure, joyful laughter. My first thought was, isn't he supposed to be speaking at a tech conference in Singapore? My second thought vanished when the boy's voice cut through the noise. "Daddy, can I have a red cupcake?" The boy pointed at the dessert display, his voice piercing the gallery's chatter. "Daddy," he called Marcus Daddy. A sharp ringing started in my ears, blurring all other sound. Sarah was still looking at the auction guide, totally oblivious. I fell back against a wall, needing the support, and that's when she saw my face. "Eleanor, what is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't form words. I just stared. Marcus set the boy down, straightened his little blazer, and gave him a smile so full of pure adoration it made me physically ill. I hadn't seen that smile aimed at me in years. And standing next to him, her hand resting on Marcus's arm like she owned it, was a woman in a jaw-dropping crimson dress. I recognized her immediately. Isabella Ritchie, his firm's star designer. About 4 years ago, I'd brought lunch to his office. Isabella was the one who intercepted me, all professional smiles, saying, "Mrs. Thorne, what a lovely surprise." She was in a bland grey suit back then, her hair pulled back severely, a world away from the glowing, confident woman owning the room tonight. Sarah followed my stare and her jaw dropped. "Oh my God! Is that Marcus?" I couldn't answer. My hands were shaking, but I somehow managed to pull my phone out of my handbag. I raised my phone and framed the shot. Marcus was pointing out the string quartet to the little boy. Isabella was right there, handing the child a tiny bottle of sparkling cider from a waiter's tray. The boy lit up, shouting, "Thanks, Daddy, you're the best!" Marcus leaned down and kissed his hair. Click! I got it. Then another. And a third, for good measure. They started walking toward the patio, Marcus holding the boy's hand, his other hand slipping into Isabella's. A perfect little family unit. The boy got some frosting on his cheek, and Marcus, without even thinking, took a napkin and gently wiped it clean. That easy, natural, fatherly motion. He had never, not once, shown that kind of instinct with our son, Leo. When Leo was 7, he broke his arm in a nasty skateboarding accident. I called Marcus from the emergency room, sobbing, pleading with him to fly back from a business trip in Tokyo, but he claimed the final investor meeting was too crucial. When Leo won his first regional coding competition at 12, I sent him the video. Marcus's only response was a text. "Good job." Now Leo was 17, and I was the only parent at every award ceremony, every parent-teacher conference for the last decade. I gave that man a brilliant son, raised him for 17 years, and Marcus never once bothered to wipe a tear from his face. Sarah grabbed my arm, her voice a sharp whisper. "Eleanor, say something, please." I lowered my phone, turned away from the scene, and sucked in a long, rattled breath. "We're going." Sarah was shocked. "That's it? You're not going to go over there and cause a scene?" I just said it again. "We're going. Right now." I grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the exit, refusing to look back. It wasn't until we were in her car with the doors locked that I saw the crescent-shaped cuts in my palms where my nails had dug in. Sarah drove, watching my reflection in the dark windshield, but stayed quiet. I pulled up the picture and zoomed in. The boy was gorgeous, with Marcus's exact same dark, thoughtful eyes. A miniature Marcus. He looked about 4 years old. That meant Marcus and Isabella had been together for at least 5 years. While I was putting my own dream of opening an art gallery on hold to help him launch his tech company, Thorn Innovations, from our garage. I remember designing his first office space. I worked so hard I developed chronic migraines for 6 months, and all that time Leo was just a little kid, asking night after night, "When is Dad coming home?" And I would invent these heroic stories, telling him his father was building an empire for us. My God, what a complete and utter fool I've been. I pressed my face against the cold window and started to laugh, a sharp, broken sound that quickly shattered into sobs. Sarah threw a box of tissues into my lap. "Eleanor Thorne, you stop that right now. Cry or scream, but that laughing is freaking me out." "Seriously, you're scaring me." I ignored the tissues, using my sleeve to wipe my eyes. My voice came out cold and steady, shocking even me. "Sarah, I need a lawyer. It's Friday night. We'll find someone on Monday." "Monday's too late," I said. "I need one now." Sarah paused, then spun the wheel into a sharp U-turn, racing back toward the city. I dialed Leo's number. He answered instantly. "Mom?" He sounded exhausted. Hearing him made my heart clench. "Honey, I have to ask you something important." "Yeah, what's up?" I gripped the phone. If your father and I were to get a divorce, who would you want to live with?" The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. When Leo finally spoke, his voice was clear and sharp, all the tiredness gone. "Mom, what did he do?" "Just answer the question for me, please." There was no hesitation at all. "You." The word was a single, clean shot. Then he repeated it. "Mom, it's you. Whatever's happening, I'm with you." I closed my eyes as a fresh wave of quiet tears streamed down my face. "Okay, sweetie. I know. Please get some sleep." "Mom, wait." But I ended the call and let the phone drop. Sarah's car was idling outside a towering glass high-rise. She put the car in park but left the engine humming, turning to face me. David Chen. He was my divorce lawyer's partner. I just texted him. He drove back to the office and he's waiting for us upstairs. "Thank you, Sarah." "Don't thank me yet," she said, her voice strained. "And I'm coming with you." Mr. Chen appeared to be in his late 40s, wearing an impeccable suit with eyes that saw everything. He gave me a bottle of water and slid a divorce petition across his massive oak desk. "Mrs. Thorne, read this, then tell me precisely what you want. Assets, accounts, custody." I read each line numbly. "I want the houses," I said, my voice flat, "and full, sole custody of Leo. Marcus can have his shares, but I want a 30% stake in his Project Chimera, placed in a trust I control." Chen raised an eyebrow. "That's an aggressive opening. He'll never agree." I unlocked my phone, opened the picture, and pushed it across his desk. "Tell him if he refuses, this photo goes to his board of directors at sunrise." Chen barely blinked. He glanced at the screen for a second and gave a sharp nod. "Understood." Sarah, standing by the panoramic window, went rigid, her expression a mix of terror and awe. We had been friends for 2 decades. She'd never seen me like this. But then, she never had to. For 20 years, I was the perfect wife to a tech mogul. I managed our homes, raised our son, and hosted his business partners. When his startup almost failed, I sold the art my father left me to keep it afloat. When his father got sick, I was the one who managed his care for 2 long years, like he was my own dad. Everyone always remarked how lucky Marcus Thorne's was to have me. And what was my reward for being so perfect? A secret 4-year-old son with his top designer. And I was obviously the last one to find out. I scanned the petition one more time and reached for the pen, but just as I was about to sign, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up. Leo. I hesitated for a second, then answered. "Mom, where are you?" Leo's voice was different now. It had a cold, steady tone I'd never heard before. "I'm just handling something, sweetie. Are you with a lawyer?" It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I looked at Sarah. She shook her head frantically. mouthing I didn't say a word. "Leo, just listen to me." "Mom, I know about Isabella." Leo's voice was flat, with zero emotion. "I found everything. The private server backups, hotel charges, the lease on her apartment, even the preschool tuition payments. It's all here. And I'm sending you a gift." "A gift?" I asked. Hearing the rapid clicking of his keyboard, he let out a cold, hollow laugh. "A gift our father will be paying for the rest of his life. That was just moments ago. Now, it was almost 10 p.m. as we left the lawyer's office. Sarah's offered to grab us some food, but I just shook my head and told her to take me home. Home. The word tasted like poison. Mark and I built this life together for 20 years. I picked everything from the architectural plans to the throw pillows. He once stood right here, held my face in his hands, and said, "This is just a house. You are my home." What a perfect lie. As we pulled up, I saw his sleek black Tesla in the driveway. Maya gripped the wheel, her knuckles white. "Chloe, you call me, day or night. Seriously." I got out of the car. The sound of my stilettos echoed on the stone walkway before the front door scanned my face and unlocked. The living room was bathed in the warm, low light I'd designed. Mark was on the sofa, watching the financial news flicker across a giant screen. A glass of scotch sat on the coaster beside him. He heard me enter but didn't even turn his head. "You were out late. The housekeeper said you left this morning." I let my purse drop and collapsed into the armchair across from him. My chair. Every night I'd sit there, top up his drink, and listen to him talk about venture capital deals I didn't care about. I used to think that was happiness. Now the memory of it just made my stomach turn. Mark Thorne. I used his full name for the first time in nearly 2 decades. It was always just Mark, or Babe. That got his attention. He finally peeled his eyes away from the screen, a hint of annoyance in his gaze. He was still a handsome man, impossibly fit at 52, with a jawline that could cut glass. He made a $7,000 suit look casual. And Ava Reed was a decade younger than me. Of course she'd want a man like him. I unlocked my phone, pulled up the photo, and slid it across the coffee table. It was him and Ava holding a little boy, a perfect family portrait. The phone stopped right in front of him. Mark glanced down at the screen, and for just a second his smug composure cracked. But there was no fear, not even a little. He just leaned back into the sofa, lifted his scotch, and took a long, slow sip. "Are we hiring hackers now?" he asked, his voice chillingly calm. The rage was a physical thing in my throat. "Our son is a genius, Mark. He's the one who found this. You're having an affair in our city, and our own child had to find the proof." He took another sip, set the glass down deliberately, and after a long, drawn-out silence, he chuckled. "Well, if you already know, I guess the charade is over." That one sentence destroyed what little composure I had left. He said it so casually, as if he were discussing a quarterly report. "How old is he?" The question came out as a strangled whisper. "He's 5. And her?" "Ava Reed. You've met her at company events." "I know I've met her." My nails dug into the armrest of the chair. "I'm asking you who she is to you." Mark stood up and walked to the massive window overlooking the city lights. His reflection stared back at me. "She's the mother of my other son," he said simply. And then I started to laugh. My lips trembled, but I couldn't stop the awful, brittle smile from spreading across my face. "Your other son? Then what is Liam? What is he to you?" "Our son, who just turned 18. How many of his games did you miss?" "Every award he won, every time he was sick. Where were you, Mark?" He turned from the window, his eyes flashing with irritation. "Chloe, don't be so melodramatic. Liam is my son and heir. That doesn't change. But Noah needs his father too. Noah." The boy had a name. I snatched the scotch glass from the table and hurled it into the empty fireplace. It shattered on impact, spraying liquor and shards everywhere. Mark actually flinched. "What the hell do you think you're doing? What am I doing?" "Why don't you tell me, Mark?" I stood and walked toward him until I was right in his face. "I have been your perfect wife for 2 decades. I gave you our son. I helped you build this tech empire from a garage. I cared for your own mother while she was dying, and this is my reward? For 5 years. You have been lying straight to my face for 5 entire years. I never meant to lie, he said, his voice maddeningly patient. I just couldn't find the right time to tell you. You couldn't find the time. I drew my arm back and slapped him hard across the face. The crack echoed in the huge, silent room. His head snapped to the side, a red mark blooming on his cheek. He turned his head back, his eyes now cold and hard as steel. Chloe, calm down. I am perfectly calm. I pulled the divorce papers from my purse and threw them on the table. Sign them, Mark? Our lawyers are meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. The house, Liam's college trust, and 20% of Thorn Dynamics are non-negotiable. I want everything else. Mark snatched the document and started reading. His face grew dark when he saw the part about his company shares. 20%? Are you insane? You're the one who's insane. Now stop wasting my time. I held up my phone. You don't sign this, and the whole sordid story, with pictures, goes to the board, your investors, and every tech blog on the planet. The blood drained from his face. You wouldn't! Try me. We stood there, locked in a battle of wills. The only sound was the low hum of the server rack in the hall. Finally, Mark exhaled sharply and slammed the papers back down. Fine. 10 tomorrow. But this stock clause, I want my legal team to review it. I pulled a pen from my purse and offered it to him. Then, write that down. And if you fight me on it, you lose all parental rights to Liam. Sign it. Mark stared at the pen, his jaw tight with fury, but he was trapped. He grabbed it from my hand, scribbled a note on the last page, and signed his name with a furious slash. Chloe, you are going to regret this for the rest of your life. The only thing I regret is the 20 years I wasted on you. I didn't give him a second look. I just picked up the signed agreement and walked upstairs. I locked our bedroom door, dropped my purse, and slid to the floor, my back against the cold wood panelling. The adrenaline vanished, leaving me shaking. Silent tears streamed down my face as I bit my lip to keep from screaming. Tasting blood, my phone vibrated. A text from Liam. Mom! Saw that on the security feed. Nice right hook. I glanced up and saw the tiny camera lenses in the corner. He'd installed the new system last month. I'd totally forgotten. I wiped my face and recorded a quick voice memo, keeping my tone as even as I could. Get some sleep, sweetie. It's going to be a long day tomorrow, and please eat something, he replied instantly. Tomorrow's fight can wait. Mum, I need you in my room now. I hesitated. His door was closed. His lights were out. I assumed he was asleep. I guess not. I took a deep breath, stood up, splashed water on my face, and walked down the hall to his room. I knocked softly. It's unlocked, he said. The second I stepped inside, I froze. Liam's room was usually a chaotic mess of computer parts. Tonight it was spotless. His giant whiteboard was covered with financial charts, photographs, and a detailed timeline. Scrawled in the middle in red marker were 3 words. Phase 2, execute. He was sitting with his back to me, staring at a wall of 3 glowing monitors. The screens were filled with scrolling code, spreadsheets, and what looked like live security feeds. I saw the Thorn Dynamics logo on several files. Liam, what is all this? He spun around in his gaming chair and took off his glasses. Without them, his eyes the same shape as his father's held a cold, calculating gaze that was genuinely unnerving on an 18-year-old. It's leverage, he said, for Dad's other crimes. The words sucked all the air from my lungs. The room suddenly felt very small. I just stood in the doorway, staring at the screens of data, unable to form a sentence. My son, my boy, was sitting there with the quiet focus of a 4-star general planning an invasion. He was a total stranger, not the kid who used to bargain for more screen time. What did you just say? I asked, finally stepping inside and shutting the door behind me. My voice dropped to a whisper. What other crimes? Liam put his glasses back on. His fingers danced over the keyboard, and a new window filled a screen packed with encrypted folders and video files. Mom, he said, you'd better sit down. Liam turned back to his screens. Mom, you need to see this. But you have to promise me you'll keep it together. I sat on the edge of his bed, twisting my hands in my lap, trying to keep my voice steady. Okay, Liam, I promise. He took a sharp breath and double-clicked a file. A huge spreadsheet appeared, with endless columns of numbers. I saw a name at the top, a shell corporation I'd never heard of. The account number was for a bank in the Cayman Islands. Dad opened this account 6 years ago. Liam pointed to several lines highlighted in red. He's laundered over $30 million through it since then. $30 million? The number was so huge it sounded fake. My head began to pound. I knew Thorn Dynamics was successful. I knew Mark was incredibly rich. But 30 million, hidden away in a secret account? Where did all that money go, Liam? He didn't answer. He just opened another file. A deed for a massive ski and chalet in Aspen appeared on the screen. And the registered owner? Ava Reed. Bought and paid for 2 years ago. This place is worth $7 million, Mom. He bought it in cash. Liam's voice was completely pan. The wire transfer originated from the Cayman account. Then he pulled up a third window. A beachfront mansion in Malibu. The account was in Isabel Croft S. Mother S. name, but the money trail led right back to him. $10 million. Next, an Aston Martin and a custom Escalade, both registered to her. Another $500,000 just gone. I just watched as he clicked through file after file, each one a body blow. 5 years, $40 million, a beach house in the Hamptons, a Manhattan penthouse, luxury cars. He built her an entire life using our family's money, using my son's inheritance. He wasn't just hiding it, Mom. Leo switched screens, showing me a chart of Blackwood Holdings shell companies. Look, 2 years ago, Dad laundered 5% of his personal shares through this whole mess straight to Isabel Croft. The main shell company is registered in the Caymans. The director is just some paid frontman, but the real owner is Isabel. My hands started to tremble. 5% of Blackwood Holdings, that was easily over 100 million. Add the 40 million in cash and assets, and my husband had secretly funneled $140 million to that woman. How did you find all of this? Leo adjusted his glasses, a smirk playing on his lips, a terrifying blend of teenage ego and cold rage. Mom, what do you think I do in my room? I built this entire smart home system. Dad's laptop, his phone, his office PC, they all run on my network. He bragged his encryption was unbreakable. To me, it was a joke. He paused, then added, besides, he got sloppy. He accessed his Cayman accounts from his office right here in this house, repeatedly. The encrypted keys, the saved passwords, the authentication codes, it was all just sitting on his hard drive, waiting for me to find it. I was in shock. Should I be proud or completely horrified? My 17-year-old son had just systematically dismantled his own father's secret world. But then I thought, what had Ethan ever really done for him? A man who was hardly a father has no right to his son's loyalty. And there's this. Leo opened an audio file. It was a recording from the smart speaker in the study and office I knew all too well. It was Ethan's private sanctuary. Ethan was on a call, and the voice on the other end was Isabel S. Her tone was like silk draped over a razor blade. Ethan, darling, everything is set for the annual gala. You are still going to announce my appointment to the Foundation's board, right? Ethan S.'s voice was closer, filled with that easy, confident charm of his. Of course, my love. It's done. The entire board will be there. All of the press, you'll get up, say a few words, and I'll make the big announcement. And what if she decides it ought to cause a scene about the divorce? Isabel S.'s question was perfectly calculated. Your wife isn't some fool you can just steamroll. Ethan let out a short, brutal laugh, a laugh so cold it made my blood run ice. Her? Clara? He scoffed. She's an ornament. She's lived in my penthouse for 20 years, with everything she could ever desire handed to her on a platter. She has zero clue how the real world operates. The only reason I stayed was to give Leo a stable home. Don't worry, now that he's practically an adult, it's time for my next chapter. If she says smart, she'll take this generous settlement I offer and disappear quietly. And if she's not smart? Isabel asked, her voice dropping to a seductive whisper. Ethan's voice became a low conspiracy, which the hidden microphone picked up with chilling clarity. Then I'll cut her off without a single penny. Every last thing she owns is in my name. Her parents are gone. Who on earth is going to help her fight me? The audio file ended, but I could still hear Strinty's confident, condescending tone. He was still so handsome, with that killer smile and effortless charm, but hearing him now, a deep, paralyzing chill spread through my body. "Mom!" Leo spun his chair to face me, his eyes locked onto mine. His expression was calm, but I saw his leg bouncing beneath the desk, vibrating with nervous energy. "I found all this 3 days ago. Do you have any idea how hard it's been to sit on this?" I reached out and smoothed his hair. It was dark like mine, not that sandy blonde colour like Ethan's. They always called him the quiet one. Who knew that behind that watchful gaze, he was gathering an arsenal? "Do you see now why I begged you not to sign anything?" he asked. "I thought you were just worried he'd try to leave me with almost nothing." Leo shook his head, a dark smile playing on his lips. "It's so much worse than that, Mom." He switched screens again, showing one final document. It was an encrypted email. The sender was Ethan Blackwood. The recipient was Marcus Thorne. I knew the name. Marcus was the head of legal for Blackwood Holdings, one of Ethan S.'s most vicious attack dogs. The email was short, but every word was a knife. "Marcus, we're going ahead with the divorce strategy. By law, if we can prove marital misconduct by Clara, I can drastically slash her settlement. I need you to start creating the necessary evidence now. Also, after the gala, I want you to prepare the papers for Julian's legal recognition. He must be formally added to the Blackwood family trust. Regards, Ethan." I read the email again and again until the words became a blur. Ethan wasn't just leaving me. He was planning a legal ambush to leave me penniless. He was going to invent an affair. Me, Clara Vance, the woman who spent 20 years being the perfect society wife and mother. What lie could he even invent? And worse, the part about Julian. Ethan didn't just want Isabel's son to have our money. He planned to make him a legal heir and steal my son's entire birthright. My hand shot out and gripped Leo's wrist, my knuckles turning bone white. "Leo, he is not getting away with any of this." "I know, Mom. He isn't." Leo gently placed his other hand over mine. "That's why I made you wait 3 days. He stood up and walked to a large digital whiteboard on his wall. On it was a detailed timeline, starting 3 days ago and ending next Saturday. He tapped the final date, the Blackwood Holdings annual charity gala. It's at the Metropolitan Museum Ballroom. Leo said every major investor, business partner, and half of the city's press will be there. He circled the date. Dad is planning to make 2 huge announcements. First, the launch of their new global initiative. And second, Isabel Croft's promotion to the Foundation S Board. Leo turned to me, his smile unreadable, like a predator closing in on its prey. But he has no idea there will be a third announcement. He pulled a small, sleek box from a drawer and opened it. Inside was a tiny microphone, small enough to pin to a lapel. "I've already compromised the Museum S entire audiovisual network," Leo said, completely casually. "So, what do you want them to see and hear?" "You just need to tell me." I reached out and picked up the device, its cool metal sending a shock through my skin. "Mom." He looked right at me, his eyes burning with focus. "Mom." Then he said it, his voice low but sharper than any knife. "I'm not asking you to fight for a bigger settlement. I'm asking you to destroy Chehim." The words hung in the air between us. I finally stood and walked to the digital whiteboard, my eyes tracing the whole timeline. The date Isabel was first hired. The date her son was born. The date the first Cayman Islands account was opened. The date of every transfer, every property purchased, every secret wire. It was all there, a battle plan laid out with cold, calculated precision. I turned back around, the tiny microphone clutched tight in my hand. Leo smiled, and then he did something he had never, ever done before. He made a fist and held it out for me to bump. I made my own fist and bumped his. Let's burn it all down. Chapter 4. The longest week. I didn't sleep at all that night. Lying there in our massive penthouse bedroom, the space next to me felt like a block of ice. Ethan was gone, and I had no clue when he'd even left. Maybe he was at the office. Maybe he was with Isabel. Honestly, I couldn't find the energy to care anymore. I just laid in that king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every piece of his betrayal my son had just revealed. When the sun finally came up, I gave up. I showered and put on a sharp black sheath dress. Doing my makeup, I saw a stranger staring back a perfect mask with cold, hollow eyes. Who was I? The elegant, perfect wife of Ethan Blackwood, the ever-gracious Clara. People always praised my quiet dignity, my endless patience. And what had it gotten me? 5 years of his lies, $140 million of our fortune stolen, and a divorce strategy designed to leave me totally ruined. Applying a dark red lipstick, I met my own eyes in the mirror. Clara Vance, you let him walk all over you for 20 years, but you are awake now. At 7:30, I went downstairs. Our housekeeper, Maria, had set the breakfast table. Fresh croissants with imported jam, Ethan's absolute favourite. For 2 decades, every single breakfast was chosen for him. All I ever really wanted was black coffee and fruit, but I never said a word. It seems so pathetic looking back now. Mr. Blackwood didn't come home last night. Should I try his mobile? Maria asked. No, that's all right. I lifted my mug, taking a very deliberate sip. My voice was completely steady. And Maria, from now on, don't bother making his breakfast. Just an espresso and toast for me is fine. Maria paused, feeling the temperature in the room plummet, but she knew better than to ask why. She simply nodded. Yes, Ma'am. After I ate, I walked to Leo's room and knocked. Silence. I eased the door open and saw him passed out at his desk, face down on his keyboard. His glasses sat crooked on his head. His 3 monitors were glowing, streaming rows of complex data. I went to shake him, and he shot straight up in his chair. Mom, what is it? It's 3:30 in the morning. Why are you awake? He rubbed his face, his voice still rough with sleep. I cracked the encryption on that drive from Dad's safe, his secret project, Aura. It turns out these expense reports are going to be very, very insightful. He hit a few keys and the screens lit up with spreadsheets. One showed a trip to London for a finance summit, but the hotel bill was for a honeymoon suite. Then dozens more popped up. A trip to Tokyo had a charge for a Patek Philippe watch, marked down as a client gift. Another detailed a private ski trip to Vail. Ethan had highlighted the dates on every single one. Look at these dates. Last spring, he filed this and told you he was at a conference in Davos. He was in Vail with her. The year before that, on your anniversary, he claimed he was meeting investors in Hong Kong. He was actually on a yacht with her off the coast of Italy. I just stared at the screen, each date a lie, perfectly matching one of Julian's business trips. It was a 6-year timeline of his affair, right there in black and white. But Ethan wasn't finished. He opened a different folder. Mom, look. I found this last night. It's the internal audit for Sterling Ventures. The screen displayed a document. Internal audit, Sterling Ventures 2024, strictly confidential. 2 paragraphs were highlighted in a sharp, angry yellow. I leaned in, my heart hammering against my ribs. The first said, our review has uncovered a significant misappropriation of investor capital. Managing partner Julian Sterling has been funneling fund assets through shell corporations to finance an unsanctioned side venture. The total is estimated to be over $50 million. The second read, the due diligence on our new junior partner nominee is incomplete. The background check for Isabella Vance reveals falsified credentials. Furthermore, her undisclosed personal relationship with Julian Sterling is a severe breach of company ethics. I looked at Ethan, my mouth too dry to speak. How did you find this? It was on his personal encrypted drive, but he made a mistake and synced it to our home network. The encryption was military grade, but honestly, it was child's play. I just took it apart. He said it so casually, but I could see the bone-deep exhaustion in his eyes. He'd been working on this all night. The auditors flagged this 2 days ago. It hasn't gone to the other partners yet. Dad is trying to bury those 2 paragraphs before he submits the final report. So, it was more than just cheating. He committed a major financial crime. Exactly. Ethan smirked. 50 million in wire fraud, under federal law, that's 20 years. Easy. And that's not even counting the securities fraud charges. Mom, I don't just want him to pay. I want to see him completely ruined. I leaned on the desk, crossing my arms, just thinking. Outside, the early morning San Francisco fog was starting to burn off. The monitor's light made my son look so young, just 16 years old. At his age, other kids stress about getting a driver's license or prom dates. My son was plotting the complete destruction of his own father. "Ethan," I started, my voice trembling slightly. "Do you honestly hate him that much?" Ethan refused to meet my eyes. He took off his glasses and started cleaning them on his shirt, his head bowed. I couldn't see his face. Finally, he spoke. "Mom, do you remember 8th grade, when I won the National Coding Championship? First prize." The day of the final round, I told him 5 different times. He promised he would be there. I waited by the exit for over an hour after it ended. After all the other parents had picked up their kids, you were the only one left sitting there with me. He put his glasses back on, and his eyes found mine. They were bloodshot from staring at the screen. After that, I gave up hating him. You can be let down by someone when you have 0 expectations. But Mom, his expression turned to stone, the youth vanishing from his voice. "He should never have hurt you. That is the one thing I will never forgive." My eyes started to sting. I looked away before he could see, taking a breath to steady myself. Now is not the time to cry. I can break down later. Okay. I put my hand on his shoulder. 2 days from now, at the Aura Fund launch party, I need everything you found in a single, neat package. You handle the technical side, and I'll handle the theatrics. A slow grin spread across Ethan's face. For a second, he looked just like his father, but completely different at the same time. Julian's smile was as a tool. Ethan's was pure, ice-cold justice. "Mom, I have something for you." He opened a drawer and took out a small, velvet box. Inside was a beautiful platinum and emerald brooch. "It has a high-def micro camera and microphone inside," Ethan said. "It has a 120-degree view and can pick up sound from 30 feet away. Just press the main emerald to start streaming the feed to my laptop. I've already created a back door into the entire media system at the 4 Seasons. The second you press that stone, every single screen in that ballroom will broadcast whatever I send them." I picked up the brooch. It felt solid and cool, so gorgeous you would never suspect its real purpose. The emerald was a deep, cold green, like the water under the Golden Gate Bridge. "You are a little genius. If you put this much effort into your college applications, you would already have a full ride to Stanford." Ethan just chuckled. "And miss this? The real fun is helping you burn Dad's whole world to the ground." I couldn't help but laugh with him. It was the first time I'd laughed since yesterday. That afternoon, I went about my day as usual. I had lunch with a friend and went to a private gallery viewing. The curator told me I didn't look a day over 35. I smiled politely, thinking, after tomorrow, everyone will know that Ava Sterling isn't just well preserved, she's a predator. At about 4 p.m, my phone buzzed. Julian's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail once, then picked up, making my voice sound light and unbothered. "Hello, Ava." He sounded completely thrown. He was clearly expecting to get a crying, hysterical wife. Not this. "About the divorce, I think we should talk. We shouldn't file the paperwork with the court just yet." A cold smile touched my lips, but I kept my voice like honey. "Oh, really? A change of heart?" "Because I can assure you I haven't had one." He paused, clearly trying to find the right angle. "I just think we've been married for 20 years. This doesn't need to turn into some messy public fight. We can divide the assets between us, quietly. There's no need to be hasty." Quietly. He just wanted more time to bury that internal audit, time for his new fund launch to be a success, time for Isabella's partnership to be finalized. Once all of that was done, he wouldn't want to be quiet, he would want to destroy me. Well, I leaned back on the chaise lounge, crossing my legs. My voice was smooth as silk. "You're right, 20 years is a long time. It would be much better to handle this with dignity. We don't have to file tomorrow. But my lawyer is still moving forward, and my terms are not changing." There was a long, stunned silence on his end. "Ava, you have to be reasonable," he finally sputtered. What in the world did he think would happen? I ended the call. Outside, The lights of the San Francisco Bay were beginning to sparkle in the dusk. I just sat there, phone in my hand, feeling strangely calm. It was the calm before the earthquake. In 2 days, at the launch party for his precious Aura Fund, I, Ava Sterling, would wear my most devastating dress and my sharpest heels. I would walk into that ballroom and I would bring his entire corrupt empire crashing down around him. My husband Julian thought he had a quiet, obedient wife. He's about to meet the woman he created. But he had no idea my son Ethan and I were preparing to flip the entire board. The next morning, the day before Julian's big launch, the chime echoed through our San Francisco penthouse. It was 7:30 a.m. Our housekeeper was off, so it was just Ethan and me. I put on a silk dressing gown and answered the door, expecting a delivery. But when I pulled the heavy door open, my heart went cold. It was Isabella Vance. She was wearing a crisp, white power suit, a Birkin hanging from her arm, and she was holding a little boy's hand. A small boy in a tiny tailored blazer, his dark hair combed perfectly. His big brown eyes looked up at me with total, heartbreaking innocence. Behind them, a nanny was waiting with a set of designer luggage. "Mrs. Sterling!" Isabella S.'s smile was painfully bright. Her voice was pure poison disguised as sugar. "I am so sorry to bother you. Julian was at my apartment last night, and he left in such a hurry he forgot his security fob for the office. I thought I'd drop it by so Liam could give it his daddy, and we could show our son where his father lives." Her words were a swarm of wasps. My apartment. Where his father lives. Every syllable was designed to sting, but I didn't even flinch. I simply smiled. "Is that right? Well then, by all means, you must come in." As I moved aside, I caught a flicker of annoyance in Isabella's eyes. This was not the reaction she wanted. She was hoping for tears, for screaming, for the classic, scorned wife meltdown. She swept past me with her son, her Christian Louboutin heels clicking a victory march on our marble floors. The little boy stared at everything, his eyes wide. "Mommy, is this where Daddy lives?" "It's like a palace." "Yes, my sweet boy. And very soon, this will be our new home," she cooed, her words a final, venomous dart aimed straight at me. I closed the door, deciding to just sit back and watch her show. A whole list of brutal insults was forming in my head, but I kept my smile perfectly pleasant. "Please, sit down. Can I get you anything? Some water?" "Oh, don't go to any trouble, Mrs. Sterling." Chloe sank into our white linen sofa, sizing it up, crossing her impossibly long legs. "I'm just here to drop something off for Marcus, then I'll be out of your way." She said she was leaving, but she was settling in. The nanny let her little boy, Noah, wander over to a display table. He put his sticky hands on the glass, reaching for a kinetic sculpture Marcus had commissioned. My jaw clenched, but I said nothing. Chloe pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of Marcus's platinum watch on her nightstand. She slid the phone onto the coffee table, offering a smug, self-satisfied little smile. "Ava, there's something else I was hoping we could discuss." And there it was. The curtain raiser was over, time for the main event. "I'm listening." I sat in the armchair opposite her, trying to look completely in control. She adjusted her blazer, leaning forward like we were best friends, sharing a secret. "Ava, I know you're aware of Marcus and me, and I can only imagine how hard this is. Honestly, this whole situation is just awful for me too." "Awful," she said, looking like she'd just hit the jackpot. I waited. "But things happen, you know. Marcus and I have been deeply in love for 5 years. Noah is almost 5. You're a mother too, Ava. You must understand us wanting what's best for your child. I can't let him grow up in the shadows of his parents' relationship. He deserves a real family." As she talked, her eyes started to well up with fake tears. It was a brilliant performance, really, so I decided to cut right to the chase, my voice flat. "What do you want, Chloe?" She bit her lip, the perfect picture of a woman in pain. "Let him go. This marriage is a sham. Continuing this charade is just hurting everyone. If you agree to a quiet divorce, we'll make sure you're taken care of very, very well." That phrase hung in the air. Taken care of. I almost laughed. I, Ava Sterling, had been with Marcus for 15 years. My family's inheritance was the seed money for his first software company. My uncle's contacts landed him his first round of venture capital. I poured my life into building his tech empire and our family. And now his girlfriend was offering to take care of me like I was some assistant he'd just laid off. "Miss Reed," I started, my voice turning to ice. "Are you done?" She actually recoiled, shocked by the shift in my tone. "Mrs. Sterling, I came here to be honest." "Honest?" I laughed, short and sharp. An honest woman doesn't hide behind her son to threaten another woman in her own home. "So, what's the real play, the photo or this performance?" Chloe's smirk disappeared, replaced in a flash by her wounded bird expression. "Ava, you're twisting things." I just wanted to. A voice from the top of the stairs cut her short. We both looked up. Liam was standing there, leaning against the railing in a simple Stanford yeti. His hair was a mess, just a college kid home for the weekend, but his eyes were sharp. Those eyes, just like his father's, swept over Chloe and Noah, taking in the whole scene before landing on the phone. "Who's this?" he asked, his voice neutral, but he knew exactly who she was. The moment she saw him, Chloe's entire demeanour changed. She knew who Liam was. The heir, 20 years old, and definitely not a fool. "Hello, you must be Liam. Your father always talks about you. You're even more handsome in person." Chloe stood up, flashing a bright, rehearsed smile. Liam didn't react. He came down the stairs slowly, one step at a time, and paused near the table. Noah was now on his tiptoes, his little fingers just reaching the edge of the kinetic sculpture, making it wobble. Liam's hand shot out and steadied it without a sound. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice soft but with a hard edge. "We don't touch things that aren't ours." The little boy's face crumpled, and he started to wail. Chloe rushed to scoop him up, glaring at me over his head. "Mrs. Sterling, he's just a little boy. It's a stupid sculpture. Was that necessary?" Before I could answer, Liam spoke. "Miss Reed," he said her name like it tasted bad. "You said you came to drop something off. The phone is on the table. I believe it's time for you to leave." Chloe's carefully arranged face finally cracked into a real ugly snarl. She had clearly thought I'd be an easy mark, but she never expected the sun to shut her down. She clutched Noah tighter, the doting mother act gone. "Ava," she dropped the pretense. "You see? This is what he's like. Fine, no more games. Marcus loves me, and this house is going to be mine very soon. Walk away now, and you'll get a very nice payout. But if you fight me on this, I promise you, you will leave with absolutely nothing." She then pulled a cashier's check out of her purse and threw it on the table. I glanced down. $500,000. Marcus's company had just been valued at $10 billion, and his mistress was offering me the budget for the company picnic. I stared at the check for a moment, then slowly reached out and picked it up. A triumphant, nasty smile spread across Chloe's face. She really thought I was accepting it. She thought 15 years of my life was worth $500,000. And then I tore the check right in half. "Miss Reed." I stood up, looming over her. My voice was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet before a storm. "Today, you brought a child to my home to try and blackmail me. I can overlook that. I'll just assume you're getting desperate. But I am going to offer you one piece of advice, and you should probably listen." I took one step toward her, invading her personal space, and enunciated every single word. "This is my home, the home of Ava Sterling, and until I'm the one who decides this marriage is over, neither you nor your sons will ever step foot inside it again. Now take your things and get out!" Chloe's face was a mask of pure fury. She grabbed Noah's hand, her purse, and stormed out. At the door she spun around, her eyes burning with hate. "You are going to regret this, Ava. You'll see," she spat, then slammed the door so hard one of my paintings tilted on the wall. Liam, my son, had been completely quiet. He just held up his phone. He'd recorded the entire exchange. I got it all, every word. He slid the phone into his pocket, a slow grin spreading on his face. "Mom, when you told her to get out, that was legendary." I felt the corner of my own mouth twitch upward. "What about the picture on her phone?" Liam picked up her from the table, swiping it open. A look of amusement crossed his face. "This photo of Dad's watch? It was supposed to be her big proof. It's a prop, to prove he was with her all night. Exactly. Liam set the phone down, except her little prop has a huge flaw. She sent you the original image file, not a screenshot. He tapped the screen. The photo's metadata tells the whole story. It was taken at 8:45 p.m. Dad's calendar shows his board meeting ended at 8:30. His car's GPS shows he drove to her apartment, yes, but it also shows he was back at his downtown office by 11 and stayed there working until dawn. I just stood there, letting it sink in, and then I started to laugh. So, Chloe was bluffing. Marcus was with her, sure, but he didn't stay. He was there a couple of hours, then went to work. She brought that picture here to scare me, to sell a lie. Chloe is all bluster. Liam was right, the louder she gets, the more insecure she is. My husband Marcus must have promised her the world, and now he's trying to back out. That's why she's starting to panic. I scoffed. A man like Marcus only loves his own ambition. Chloe is just another asset. Once the novelty is gone, so is she. Did she really think he'd divorce me and split his company? Liam nodded. So the problem isn't her, it's Dad. And tomorrow, at his big product launch, we're going to deal with them both. I stood there, watching the fog roll in over the bay. The orchids I'd been cultivating in the atrium were finally blooming. Their scent usually calmed me down. Liam, what if this all backfires tomorrow at the launch? It won't. His voice from behind me was solid as a rock. I have complete back-end control. The main presentation stream is being mirrored to 3 different offshore servers. I already cracked the venue's network. Every exit, every emergency system, the AV booth, I own all of it. He stood next to me, holding his tablet. A schematic of the Moscone Centre was on the screen, every access point highlighted. I'll be at the cafe across the street. If he tries to shut you down, I can be inside in less than 3 minutes. And here, take this. He took a sleek silver fountain pen from his pocket and put it in my hand. It's a dead man's switch. 1 click, and all the files we have go straight to the district attorney, Wired magazine, and every major tech blog. If Marcus makes a move and I can't get to you, just press the button. It all goes public. I took it. The metal was cool and heavy. Thank you. I looked at my son, my heart swelling with both pride and an overwhelming sadness. You're the best thing I've ever done. Liam looked away, suddenly flustered, the tips of his ears turning red. He looked away, muttering, Okay, Mom, drop the lecture. Tomorrow is huge. I messed up his hair with a grin. Outside, the Miami sun baked the hibiscus. Tomorrow was for revenge. My name is Elena Serrano. For 20 years, I played the part of the perfect wife. For 72 hours, I've contained a storm. Tomorrow, on that stage, they will both pay. Around 3 p.m., while ironing my dress for the gala, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the prefix looked official. I paused, then hit accept. Hello, I'm trying to reach Elena Serrano, Leo Serrano's mother. The voice was clipped, male and formal. This is she. Who's calling? My name is Commander Thorne, Admissions Director for the Viridian Military Academy. I'm calling because a Mr. Julian Serrano submitted an enrollment packet for your son, Leo, this morning. He wishes to register him for his final year, and we just need your verbal consent to proceed. The iron almost fell right out of my hand. A transfer? Where exactly is this academy? We're located in the Virginia countryside. It's an extremely exclusive institution. Mr. Serrano applied for full residency, so Leo would only come home on major holidays, a military academy in Virginia. Julian was trying to send my son to Virginia. The day before his biggest launch, he was trying to ship his own son across the country. Why was he so desperate to get Leo out of Miami? I took a slow breath, keeping my voice steady. Commander Thorne, I was not aware of this application. Can you tell me? Is my signature anywhere on that form? I heard the rustle of papers. It only has Mr. Serrano's signature. The second guardian field is blank, which is why we're required to call. You are his mother, correct? I'm telling you now, on the record, I do not consent. My son is not going to Virginia. Please terminate that application immediately. Understood, Mrs. Serrano. The documents will be returned to Mr. Serrano. After hanging up, I just stood there, frozen, the hot iron in my hand. My reflection was a mask of cold fury. Julian. He was trying to get my son out of the picture. I slammed it down and was about to call Leo when my phone rang again. It was Sophia. "Elena!" she screamed, her voice tight with panic. "You need to get to Leo S. school right now. His advisor just called me. Someone is there filing withdrawal papers for him. They're in the main office as we speak." My mind was reeling. First Virginia, now this. Trying to yank him out of his high school in the city. It was a coordinated attack. Who is it? A lawyer for Julian Serrano? He's got power of attorney. He's claiming Leo is transferring to a school out of state, and they need the paperwork processed today. I'm on my way. I ended the call, snatched my keys, and sprinted. As I ran to the car, I sent Leo a voice message. "Honey, your father's attorney is at your school trying to withdraw you. I'm heading over to stop it. Don't go anywhere, just stay home." As I peeled out of the driveway, my phone rang. It was Leo. "Mom, don't go to the school." His voice was steady. Too steady. It sent a chill down my spine. "What are you talking about? Your father is trying to ship you off to Virginia. He applied to that academy and sent a lawyer to pull you out of school on the exact same day. He is trying to get rid of you." "I know," Leo said, and I could practically hear the smirk. "I shut that down an hour ago. I have a back door into the school's records system. Any change to my status requires a 2-factor code sent to my phone. His lawyer's forms are basically useless paper." I slammed onto the brakes so hard the tires screamed against the pavement. "What did you just say?" I said, "Dad isn't sending me anywhere." "Mom, just turn the car around and come home. You're driving like a maniac. I'll show you everything when you're back." I closed my eyes, resting my head on the seat, my heart hammering my ribs. For a second, I was just plain scared. Julian went after my son. My son is my only weakness. He could hide his money, carry on his affair, even have a child with her. I could take it all. But coming for Leo, that was the final line. I spun the car around and raced home. Leo was waiting, 2 laptops open and glowing on the table. One screen showed his school's admin page. The other displayed a program I didn't recognize. "Here." He angled one laptop towards me. Dad wasn't just trying to move me. He was doing this too. It was an email sent from a top exec at Serrano Developments to a list of attorneys I'd never heard of. I leaned closer. The subject line, "Confidential profile on Elena Serrano." My hands went cold. When did he send this? Just after 1 p.m. I blocked 3 attempts, but one went through. "Check out the attachment." He opened a PDF, a long, formal-looking report. The title page read, in bold, "Profile on the mental instability of Elena Serrano." In the top corner was the official letterhead of Serrano Development's legal department. I scrolled, my stomach twisting into knots. It was a list of more than a dozen lies. Pictures of me at charity events with colleagues were cropped to suggest affairs. They'd twisted old social media posts into vile accusations. One section even claimed I was an unfit mother, using our housekeeper Rosa as a supposed witness that I was unstable and neglectful. It was pure garbage, but every single page was stamped by the firm and signed by a Mr. Croft. The same lawyer who'd told Julian to start digging for dirt on me. "He's going to use this in the divorce," Leo said quietly. "I found it on the company's private server this morning. Last week, Dad hired a PI to find anything he could use against you. He was never going to settle this fairly. He's been planning to destroy you." I collapsed onto the couch, my hands gripping the fabric. So all that talk about an amicable split, it was all a performance. Precisely. He never wanted peace. And that military academy in Virginia? That was to get rid of me. With me gone, he thought he could absolutely crush you. Leo snapped the laptop shut and faced me. For the very first time, I saw genuine rage in my son's eyes. "He's been plotting against you, and he tried to use me as a pawn? Mom, how can you even pretend to be a father?" I stared at that disgusting file, and a strange sense of calm settled over me. The panic, the fury, it all just evaporated. What was left was cold, hard resolve. It was like being thrown into the ocean, a shock that makes everything brutally clear. Julian had planned every move, hiding assets, fabricating lies, shipping his own son away. Every step was designed to leave me with absolutely nothing. But he made one fatal error. He assumed that after 20 years his son would just quietly fall in line. He could not have been more mistaken. The person who actually raised Leo wasn't the famous real estate mogul, Julian Serrano. It was the woman who taught him how to code and brought him soup when he was sick. I looked at my son. The evidence, the offshore accounts, the forged permits, all of it. Is it enough to take him down at the launch tomorrow? Leo pushed his glasses up, a sly smile spreading on his face. Oh, it's more than enough, Mom. This is going to completely ruin him. Mom, you're not going to believe this. He wanted me in that Virginia Academy, right? Well, I used his personal credit card to pay the $500 application fee. I was floored. Why would you ever do that? To make him believe he's in control, Leo said, a sharp glint in his eyes. He thinks I'm just going to pack up and leave without a fight. He showed me his phone and email chain with Julian. Leo, glad you're seeing reason. Once you're settled in Virginia, I'll make sure you have everything you need. I'll be there, Dad. Wouldn't miss the launch for the world. The response came back almost instantly. Of course, I have a seat for you right in the front row. I watched their exchange, feeling a mix of sadness and cold satisfaction. Julian had absolutely no clue that his own son was the Trojan horse. Leo closed his laptop. Mom, we're ready. Tomorrow we expose everything. You just have to show up and remind everyone who you really are. I looked at him, my head giving a slow, deliberate nod. 20 years ago, I gave up being Elena Flores to become Mrs. Serrano. Tomorrow, Miami was going to remember my real name. The day arrived. Wednesday, 10 in the morning, at the Oceanfront Grand Hotel, 30 minutes before the launch of the Meridian Tower. I sat at my vanity, fastening a diamond pin to my cobalt blue suit. The outfit was armor perfectly tailored, with heels sharp enough to draw blood. The woman in the mirror was not Julian's wife. She was Elena Flores. My own reflection stared back, cool and unblinking as steel. Mom, you ready? Leo called from the doorway. Ready. I stood up. He was wearing a sharp, dark suit, looking less like my teenage son and more like a young, dangerous executive. He just nodded. Perfect. Let's go. The drive down to the waterfront was quiet, heavy with unspoken strategy. As the turquoise bay flashed by, I had one single thought. 20 years ago, I married Julian in a white gown. Today, in this suit, I was walking into his greatest achievement to detonate our marriage. A perfect circle. A block away from the hotel, Leo had the driver pull over. He fixed my pin and spoke softly. The microphone is active and patched directly into their main soundboard. I'll be remote. When it's time for me to take over the projectors, just touch your right earring. That's my cue. I nodded. Mom, he said, his voice now serious. I'm with you, 100%. I gave his hand a tight squeeze and walked toward the entrance. The ballroom lobby was a sea of Serrano Developments branding. Miami's real estate royalty, all wearing VIP lanyards, mingled near the waterfalls. The second my heel hit the marble floor, I felt the energy in the room shift, all eyes snapping to me. Is that Julian Serrano's wife? Elena? I thought she never came to these things. Wow, she looks amazing. I ignored the murmurs and walked straight into the main hall. It was enormous, packed with at least 500 people. The first few rows were reserved for the city's biggest and the board. The giant screen behind the stage showed a glistening animation of their new global investment fund, the Apex. I sat second row, aisle seat, the best view in the house. The little card on my chair read, Isabella Thorne, spouse of the CEO. I couldn't help a small, bitter laugh. At 10 a.m. on the dot, the lights went down. The host came out, welcoming everyone to the Apex Fund's official launch. We watched a slick promo video. Then the chief analyst talked about market strategy. The audience gave a polite, predictable applause. Everything was running on his perfect schedule. I just waited, my hand resting on my phone, then I calmly woke the screen with my thumb. My watch gave a single, soft buzz. Leo was standing by. 20 agonizing minutes passed. The lights dimmed again, and the host returned. And now, the visionary CEO of Thorne Capital, please welcome Mr. Marcus Thorne. A spotlight found Marcus. He stood, adjusted his $1,000 suit, and walked onto that stage like he owned the world. He looked dashing, confident, not a hint of the 50 years he was hiding. He reached the podium, and the room went completely silent. "Good morning, members of the board, our esteemed partners, and the press. Welcome to the new era of Thorn Capital." His voice was rich and calm, the same voice that once promised me forever. Now it was just an act. "Thorn Capital is only 15 years old," he said. "From a boutique firm, we've become a powerhouse in global finance. And we've done it because you believed in our relentless drive." The applause was deafening. He let it fade. "But today isn't just about a new fund, it's about securing the future leadership of this firm." My heart started pounding inside my chest. This was it. In the front row sat his sister, Olivia Thorne. She was in a striking white pantsuit, her posture impeccable. When Marcus said leadership, a faint, smug smile played on her lips. "After a unanimous board vote, I am thrilled to announce Miss Olivia Thorne as our new Chief Operating Officer." The spotlight swung to Olivia. She stood, gave a tiny, practiced nod, her eyes blazing with triumph. The applause was mixed with whispers. "Isn't she just head of investor relations? Did you know about this?" Marcus raised a hand, calling her to the stage. And that's when I stood up. My simple navy dress was nothing special, but the act of standing turned every head in the room. A few board members turned to look. One of them, a man my father used to play golf with, offered a weak, nervous smile. "Isabella, I didn't realize you'd be here." Then Marcus saw me. His perfect smile flickered for just a second. "Isabella, what are you doing?" I gave him a serene smile, stepped into the aisle, and started walking toward the stage. The sound of my heels echoed through the silent ballroom. Every eye was on me. Phones were already coming up. "Mr. Thorne," I said, my voice steady as I reached the bottom step. "This is such a monumental day. So, as your wife, I put together a little presentation of my own gift for you and the board. Don't you want to see it?" Marcus's calm finally broke. He knew that expression. He'd seen it for a decade, but never with this cold fire behind it. "Isabella, we are on a very tight schedule. We can discuss this later, at home." His voice was quiet, but dripping with poison. Olivia looked like she wanted me dead. I turned to the audience. "Board members, press, my name is Isabella Thorne, and I insist you see this." The second I finished speaking, I tapped the screen of my phone. On the massive display behind Marcus, the Thorn Capital logo dissolved into black. A beat of silence, and then a new picture snapped into view, sending a wave of gasps across the room. It was a photo. Marcus Thorne grinning, his arm wrapped around a little girl. And, holding his other hand, smiling like a happy wife, was Olivia Thorne. A caption materialized underneath them in huge white letters. The text read simply, "And their 3-year-old daughter." The ballroom exploded into utter chaos. Board members jumped to their feet. The media surged forward, cameras flashing like a lightning storm, creating a strobe-lit nightmare. Phones were up everywhere, live streaming the corporate meltdown for the world. This was a scandal of epic proportions. Marcus's face went white. He spun around to look at the screen, a vein bulging in his forehead as he roared, "Shut it off! Who's doing this? Kill the feed now!" He was yelling at the tech team, but they were paralyzed. But the image on the screen wasn't going anywhere. I pictured my brother Leo a few blocks away in a coffee shop pulling all the strings. The feed was his now. The chaos intensified as reporters swarmed the stage, flashes blinding. Mr. Davenport, the firm's largest investor, was on his feet, his face like a storm cloud. "Marcus!" he boomed. "What is the meaning of this?" Marcus staggered back, trapped against the giant screen, the picture of his sick betrayal hanging over him. He looked like a trapped rat. "It's not real! It's photoshopped! I'm being set up!" he finally screamed out. I stood my ground in the aisle, arms crossed, and just watched his kingdom fall. He was cornered. The evidence of his lies was broadcast for hundreds of people to see, some horrified, some furious, some enjoying the show. His collar was soaked with sweat, his perfect hair a mess. The powerful CEO was gone. "It's a lie!" he yelled, his voice breaking. Someone is trying to destroy me. Shut it down! But the texts couldn't do a thing. The photo stayed. Reporters were now a frantic mob below the stage. Flashes popped like firecrackers. Mr. Davenport, his face turning a dark, alarming shade of red, aimed his silver-handled cane straight at Marcus. "Marcus, is this true? Have you lost your damn mind?" Other investors were shouting over the chaos. "What the hell is this, Thorne? You owe every single one of us an answer." Marcus's lips were trembling. Sweat poured down his face, soaking the collar of his expensive suit. He glanced at his sister, Olivia. The woman who was just promoted now looked like a ghost, sinking back into her chair. Her white pantsuit was blinding in the camera flashes. A reporter saw her and shoved a mic in her face. "Miss Thorne, is that you in the picture? Are you sleeping with your own brother? Is that his secret child?" Olivia threw her hands up to her face and shrieked, "Get that camera out of my face! No, it's not me!" She was hysterical, a complete wreck, looking nothing like the firm's polished O. Her own colleagues were literally backing away from her, as if her shame was contagious. I watched the whole disaster unfold without an ounce of pity. A cold, sharp satisfaction washed over me, like drinking ice water on a scorching day, but I had more. I tapped my phone again. The image changed. Now? It showed the financial documents my brother Leo had uncovered. Bank records from the Cayman Islands and a 5-year transaction history totaling over $40 million. It was all there in black and white. Every transfer was tied to luxury condos, sports cars, and designer goods, all registered under Olivia Thorne's name. The text on the screen read, "It is confirmed Marcus Thorne used an offshore account to embezzle $40 million of marital and corporate assets. These funds purchased a Chicago penthouse, a yacht, luxury vehicles, and other gifts for his sister and mistress, Olivia Thorne. See transaction records on the right." The room erupted again. Mr. Davenport pushed through the reporters, grabbed a mic from the podium and screamed, his voice shaking with pure rage. "Marcus Thorne, did you embezzle our investment funds? Is our money part of that $40 million? Answer me!" Marcus was totally frozen. He opened his mouth but then shut it, no sound coming out. I tapped my phone one last time. The screen switched to a hidden camera view from his home office. Marcus was standing behind Olivia, his hand on her shoulder. "What if she won't sign over her shares?" Olivia asked. Marcus just sneered, his cruel voice echoing through the ballroom. "Isabella, she's a trophy wife. If she knows what's good for her, she'll take the settlement I offer and vanish. If not, I'll throw her out on the street without a penny." If anyone had any doubts, this video destroyed them. The man on that screen was undeniably Marcus. His face, his voice, it was him. The words "trophy wife" and "throw her out without a penny" hit like a punch to the gut. Mr. Davenport was shaking with fury. He raised his cane, pointing it right at Marcus. "So this is what you've been doing? Promoting your own sister to COO? And what about the insider trading? What in God's name is all of that about?" That last question silenced the entire ballroom for a split second before it exploded with even more rage. Insider trading? 3 financial reporters looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Davenport, did you say insider trading? Is there a federal corruption probe into Thorne Capital?" Davenport knew he'd slipped up, but it was too late. He took a deep breath and faced the press. "Since it's all coming out now, I won't deny it. My investigator's report landed yesterday. Marcus Thorne used shell companies to manipulate stock prices before our last 3 acquisitions were announced. We are talking about $80 million in illegal profits. The evidence is airtight. Now, even the junior analysts in the back were staring in disbelief. People were on their feet, hands over their mouths, their phones recording it all. Marcus stumbled back against the huge Presnati screen as if his bones had melted. His face wasn't just pale, it was Gray's. "Isabella, the feds are here!" My brother Leo's calm voice was in my ear. I looked toward the main entrance. 6 people in dark suits and tactical vests were walking into the ballroom. FBI was printed in bold yellow across their chests, backed up by Chicago PD detectives. The moment they walked in, the chattering crowd split open for them. Every phone in the room swelled to capture the scene as the business press went into a frenzy. This was about to be the biggest scandal on LaSalle Street in a decade. The lead agent, a guy into his 40s with a grim expression, strode right on stage and held up a warrant. Julian Vance, you're under investigation for racketeering, insider trading, and conspiracy. You need to come with us. Before Julian could even process it, a detective was already moving towards Sienna. She looked panicked, clutching her purse and trying to escape. What's going on? I haven't done anything! Sienna Croft, you're being investigated as a material witness to conspiracy and insider trading. Please put your hands behind your back. I can't explain the feeling of this colossal weight, one that's been crushing me for years, just vanishing. All that pressure came from Julian. The secrets, the infidelity, the way he made me feel crazy, the complete lack of respect. And suddenly, it was all just data on a hard drive, wire transfers, and federal charges that were about to bury him. The conference hall erupted in a storm of shouting reporters and camera flashes. I just stood in the crowd for a second, completely unseen. Then the journalists found me. Mrs. Vance, were you the source of this leak? Are you filing for divorce? Mrs. Vance, what do you say to your husband calling you his secret weapon? One reporter shoved a recorder in my face. I angled my head so my emerald earrings caught the bright stage lights. I offered a tiny, controlled smile. I'll be answering all of your questions on my official social media in 1 hour. Right now, I only have one thing to say. Mr. Vance owes me an explanation, and he definitely owes every single one of you an explanation too. The police started clearing a path for them. Julian was walked out in handcuffs, his face completely blank. As he passed Sienna, he refused to even look at her. She cried out, Julian, reaching for him, but a policewoman pulled her arm back. They took her away in the other direction. She nearly tripped on her high heels, almost falling on her face. No one moved to help her. People just recoiled as if she were poison. I could hear her sobbing, screaming it was a misunderstanding, that she was innocent. Nobody was listening. I just stood there, watching them both be led away. My friend Maria pushed through the chaos and grabbed my hand. Her palm was ice cold and damp with sweat, but her voice was buzzing with adrenaline. Clara, you did it. You actually really did it. I couldn't form any words. What do you say in a moment like this? With 100 people staring, I slowly lifted my head and started walking toward the exit, with Maria blocking for me. Alex's voice crackled through my hidden earpiece. Clara, I'm out of the coffee shop. I'll meet you downstairs with the car. I gave a slight nod. The beading on my cocktail dress glittered like shattered glass. The instant I stepped out of the finance conference, my hands started to shake. It wasn't fear, it was just the massive adrenaline dump finally hitting my system. I walked down the opulent hotel corridor, my heels clicking with purpose. When the elevator doors opened, a couple of guests who had been drawn out by the commotion were inside. They looked at me and went totally silent, pressing themselves against the wall. They had no idea who I was, but they knew I was the woman at the center of the hurricane. I didn't even look at them. I just stared at my reflection in the mirrored doors. My face was a perfect, calm mask. No tears, no smile, just eyes that burned a little hotter than before. The doors slid closed, and I heard someone whisper behind me. Was that the wife of the Apex Analytics CEO? She had her own husband arrested by the feds in the middle of his keynote speech. Savage. I leaned back against the cool elevator wall, and a short, quiet laugh escaped me. My reflection smirked back. You think that's savage? You have absolutely no clue what that man put me through. The elevator bell dinged, and I stepped out into the massive lobby. Light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, making the marble floor gleam like a frozen lake. Alex was waiting just outside, holding a small cup of tea. He looked completely composed, as if we hadn't just set off a bomb upstairs. A chai latte, right? He handed me the cup. I took a sip. The warm spice of it grounded me as the reality of it all began to land. It's over. Not completely, Alex said, drinking his own coffee. The entire conference was being recorded. That live stream has 3 different cloud backups. Right before the agents went in, I forwarded the entire raw video feed straight to the Department of Justice. I promise you, a few assistant US attorneys are watching the whole thing on their lunch break right now. I looked at him, and the kid I knew was gone. He'd grown up in a single afternoon. Let's go, Clara. Let's get you home. I held the small cup tight as we walked out onto the busy Chicago street. The sun felt warm on my face vistas as people rushed past, lost in their own lives. No one gave us a second look. We were just a brother and sister, maybe coming from a client meeting, not from destroying a billion-dollar corporation. By that night, the clip from the conference was all over the internet. My friend Lena sent me at least 10 different screenshots. 4 of the top 10 trending topics were about us. Hashtag Apex Analytics scandal. Hashtag Julian Vance arrest. Hashtag Clara Vance revenge. And my absolute favourite, hashtag Apex stock plummets. The cable news hosts and internet detectives were having a field day. Some people painted me as a hero, calling it the ultimate revenge story. Others called me a villain, insisting that after 15 years of marriage, I should have handled our issues in private. But the biggest debate was about the other child. Was he really Julian's son? That was the one question that was ripping me apart too. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, had the birth certificate. He couldn't get a DNA sample legally, but he'd hired a private investigator to get a strand of the boy's hair and rush it to a private lab. We were expecting the results any day, and Mr. Davies was firm that we use them at the most tactical time when they could inflict the most damage. That time would be the first divorce hearing. The court summons showed up the morning after the conference. Julian, who was somehow already out on bail, had filed for an emergency hearing. He was trying to force a quick settlement on our assets and our son's custody before his criminal case could get underway. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, sounded grim on the phone. Julian hired the most ruthless divorce firm in Chicago. Rumour is he paid them a $2 million retainer. Clara, he's going to try and bury you. You have to be ready. I know, I told him, my voice completely steady. 2 days later, at 9 a.m, we met in a cold, generic conference room downtown. When Julian walked in, I barely knew him. After just 2 nights in a federal lockup, his perfectly styled hair was a complete mess. A dark, patchy stubble covered his jaw, and deep, bruised shadows were dug in under his eyes. He looked like he had aged 10 years. He wore a wrinkled suit that seemed 2 sizes too big for him. The unstoppable business guru Julian Vance was gone. All that was left was this broken, hollowed-out man. Next to him was his lawyer, perfect in a custom suit, holding a leather briefcase and practically dripping with arrogance. As Julian sat down, the lawyer leaned in to whisper to him. Julian just nodded slightly, and then his eyes finally met mine across the long table. The look he gave me was a strange mix of pure hatred and a pathetic plea for pity. I just stared right back, my expression blank. I held his gaze without flinching until he was the one who finally broke eye contact and looked away. The mediator, a retired judge, called the meeting to order. His lawyer spoke first, launching into a 15-minute speech. His argument really only had 2 points. First, that I had defamed Mr. Vance, causing him untold emotional harm and ruining his career, and that he fully intended to sue me for it. And second, that my settlement proposal was completely insane and would leave his client with nothing. "To leave him destitute," he shouted, his outrage perfectly practiced for the room. Mr. Vance is the visionary who built Apex Analytics from the ground up. He poured 15 years of his life into creating an empire for his family. He is entitled to his fair share, not to be thrown away with nothing. He finished his performance and sat down, looking extremely pleased with himself. The room was silent. Everyone turned to look at me. My own lawyer began to stand, but I placed a hand on his arm to stop him. "I can handle this." I stood up, picked up a simple manila envelope from the table, walked to the middle of the room, and set it down. "Your Honour, gentlemen, before we get into assets, I have a document here that I believe you all need to see." His lawyer scoffed at me. "Mr. Davies, let's cut the drama." "This is a DNA paternity test," I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "The subjects are Julian Vance and the boy. The probability of paternity is 0%. This child has zero biological connection to you. You could feel all the air get sucked out of the room. For 5 full seconds, nobody moved. Then Julian shoved his chair back so violently it nearly tipped over as he jumped to his feet, his eyes wild. "What did you say? That's impossible, you're lying!" His lawyer was just frozen, reaching for his client's sleeve, but his own face was a perfect picture of total shock. The arbitrator looked at the lab report, flipped straight to the summary, and gave my husband a strange look. He pushed it across the table to Leo's lawyer. The lawyer grabbed it, his eyes flying across the last few lines. Instantly, all the colour washed out of his face. His mouth fell open, but he was speechless. He leaned in and whispered to Leo. I couldn't hear it, but I read his lips plain as day. "It's real, Leo." My husband just stood there, frozen, like he'd been electrocuted, his face twisted from rage to confusion, then crumbled into something I'd never witnessed before. Total collapse. The woman he'd hidden for 6 years, poured millions into, and wrecked our family for, had been playing him from the very beginning. I watched the man who, just a minute ago, was ready to scorch the earth to ruin me. He'd always treated me like another object in his collection. Now, he just slumped back in his chair, ghostly pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on dry land. He had nothing to say. The arbitrator cleared his throat, trying to pull the room back together. The court will need to verify this document. But given this, Mr. Vance, do you still wish to proceed with your claims for custody and support? Leo was a statue. His lawyer, all his earlier bravado gone, stammered for him. We withdraw our claims at this time." My lawyer, Mr. Davies, saw his chance and took it. He stood and slapped my settlement demands down on the table. He flipped through the pages with deliberate slowness, his voice sharp and cold. "Mr. Vance, my client sent this last week. All real estate goes to Clara Stone. Full custody of their son Alex goes to her. You will repay the $25 million you embezzled from the company with interest. Agree today, and we will not demand a forensic audit of your offshore accounts." Mr. Davies paused, pulling 3 more thick, sealed folders from his case and dropping them with a thud. Leo's lawyer actually flinched. "We have the Swiss transfer records and the second set of books," he said. "If we don't have an agreement by 5 p.m, these are going straight to the IRS." Dead silence. Leo could only stare at the folders. A nerve in his jaw was jumping. His lawyer frantically shuffled through a file before snapping it shut. "Leo." He leaned close, his voice a harsh, panicked whisper. "It is over. We have nothing left. She knows everything, way more than we thought, especially with this DNA proof. Everything Chloe has been doing is a legal minefield for you. If this divorce goes to trial, the feds are going to bury you." Leo swallowed hard, a dry, grating sound in the quiet room. He slowly turned his head and looked at me. His eyes, usually filled with so much fire and arrogance, were completely blank. Just a cold, empty pit. "Clara," he breathed. I braced myself for an explosion of rage, or maybe for him to start begging, but he just sat there for a long moment, and then said, "I'll sign it." Hearing those 3 words was a shock to my system. Not pity. It was just a deep, overwhelming wave of relief. 15 years we were together, and that was the only truly honest thing he had ever said to me. Not, "I love you," not, "I'm sorry." Just, "I'll sign it." The arbitrator told his clerk to prepare the final documents. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, carefully reviewed every single line. A clerk handed Leo a heavy, gold-tipped fountain pen. He stared at the empty signature line for what felt like an hour. The low hum of the office lights suddenly felt menacing. Finally, he signed. His hand was trembling so violently, the last letter of his name tore right through the paper, leaving a jagged rip. As he walked past me, he paused. He didn't look at me, but muttered just loud enough for me to hear. My mistake wasn't trusting her, it was underestimating you. And then he was gone. I stood alone in the silent room, and reached for the signed divorce agreement. The ink on Leo's signature was still wet. 15 years, from a tiny starter apartment to a world-famous architectural firm, from just the two of us to a family. Our entire shared life was now just that one, torn signature. I took a steadying breath and looked at my own signature line. Signing my name always felt like I was just an accessory of his, Mrs. Leo Vance. Today, I signed my own name, Clara Stone. It was clean, firm, and it was final. A fresh start. A new life for my son and myself. The day our divorce was finalized, the Dallas weather was absolutely beautiful. Light poured through the massive courthouse windows, making the granite floors shine. I walked out of that courtroom in a sharp white pantsuit. Mr. Davies and his legal team followed right behind me. My friend Ava linked her arm in mine, her eyes already red and puffy. The judge's decision was fast and final. 1. The marriage of Clara Stone and Leo Vance is dissolved. 2. All marital assets are awarded to me. 3. I have sole legal custody of our son, Alex. 4. Leo must repay the $25 million in embezzled funds, and 20% of Vance Architecture's voting shares will be transferred into my name. He has 7 days to transfer the funds. 6. His countersuit against me for defamation was dismissed. 7. He has to pay all of my legal fees. As the judge read each point, I sat there, my back ramrod straight, refusing to cry. My best friend, Ava, was a mess, sobbing quietly behind me. Once we got outside, she swore they were tears of joy. Clara Stone, you owe me a massive brunch, she said, dabbing at her eyes. This whole thing ruined my appetite. I'm wasting away. You owe me mimosas. I had to laugh. You got it. The moment we stepped outside, we were swallowed by a sea of reporters. Since the scandal broke, I was the biggest story in the Dallas business community. On social media, they'd nicknamed me the Steel Magnolia of the Design District. Miss Stone, do you have a statement now that the divorce is final? Clara. Is it true you're planning a full buyout of Vance Architecture? I just put on my sunglasses and gave the cameras a small, determined smile. The court's decision speaks for itself. As for the firm, all your questions will be answered after tomorrow's emergency board meeting. With that, I slid into a waiting black car, leaving all the chaos behind. The next morning, inside the Vance Architecture headquarters, the emergency board meeting was starting. There was only one thing on the agenda: replacing Leo Vance as the company president. The tension in the room was palpable. 10 directors sat around a huge concrete table, with the chairman, Mr. Harrison's, at the head. 2 seats were empty. I sat alone at the opposite end. In front of me lay the documents that made me a 20% owner of all voting shares. I had come alone. Bringing lawyers to a meeting like this is a show of weakness. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. Gentlemen, Vance Architecture is currently a ship without a captain. Since Leo's scandal broke, our stock has dropped 40% in a single week. 3 of our major clients have already pulled their projects. Our main investors are demanding that we name a new president by tomorrow's deadline. If we fail to appoint a new leader by Friday, they will call in our debts, and we will be finished. He paused, his eyes scanning the room before they settled on me. Clara Stone now controls 20% of the company shares, plus the 5% held in trust for her son, Alex. This gives her 1/4 of the total vote, making her the largest shareholder. Our corporate bylaws give her the right to nominate the next president. Mr. Reed, a director who was known for being difficult, spoke up. Miss Stone, you are indeed the largest shareholder, and your rights are perfectly clear. But Vance Architecture is in a complete nosedive. The stock is crashing. Clients are fleeing. It's a total disaster. If you feel, he said, his voice full of false concern, that you lack the necessary experience for this, we could always hire an outside crisis manager. The room fell absolutely silent. A few of the directors took nervous sips of water, their eyes fixed on me. I stood up, walked to the head of the table, and placed my hands on the back of the heavy leather president's chair. Leo's chair. I pulled it out deliberately, and then I sat down in it. Mr. Reed, gentlemen, I met the gaze of every single man in that room. My voice was even and unshakable. This firm was founded by my ex-husband, that is true, but it was built with my family's money. When he was on the brink of failure 15 years ago, I liquidated my entire inheritance to finance his first waterfront project. 10 years ago, I used my late father's political network to push the permits through for our flagship tower. I never asked for a job title. I was naive enough to believe our marriage was an actual partnership. The silence in the room was absolute. But I'm not here for pity. This company needs more than a CEO. It needs its integrity back. The market has to believe we have a future, not just a scandalous past. I opened a folder and slid copies of a new corporate restructuring plan across the polished table. This was the blueprint a trusted advisor and I had spent the last month designing in secret. First, I began outlining the new strategy. We will immediately cancel every contract connected to Leo's mistress, Chloe. We are also launching a full forensic audit of every transaction from the last 3 years. Anything we find goes directly to the SECs. Second, we are freezing all new acquisitions. Every dollar of capital will be redirected to our current projects. We will get our 2 prime properties to full occupancy within 90 days. And third, an independent oversight board led by a former federal prosecutor will rewrite our entire corporate charter. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the polished mahogany, and looked every single director in the eye. I have the legal right to claim this position, but I'm not asking for your loyalty. I'm asking you to back this plan as strategy to pull Sterling Financial from the brink of absolute ruin. The boardroom was silent. Then Mr. Hayes raised his hand, then another and another. Finally, old Mr. Kensington slowly lifted his, a faint, impressed smile on his lips. Miss Rossi, I'll be honest. I was completely against your presence here today. But that's a more coherent and frankly brilliant strategy than anything our expensive crisis consultants have proposed. You have my vote. When Mr. Hayes announced the final tally, his voice was steady. It is unanimous. Isabella Rossi is hereby appointed CEO of Sterling Financial, effective immediately. The applause started small, then grew, filling the cavernous room. I just sat there in that massive leather chair, feeling the calm, strong beat of my own heart. After they all filed out, I stayed behind. Walking into the top-floor CEO's office, I saw the incredible view of the Chicago skyline. Marcus never allowed anyone in here. I'd only seen it once before. Now, it was my city. On his desk was a picture of him and Chloe on a yacht on Lake Geneva. I picked it up, studied her laughing face for a moment, then dropped the heavy silver frame into the wastebasket. It landed with a loud, final thud, the perfect punctuation to a 15-year lie. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Caleb. Mom, how did it go? I typed back, unanimous. Your mom is the new CEO of Sterling Financial. He replied with a rocket emoji, then another message. Dad's next hearing is set for the 10th. The prosecution is sure the embezzlement charges are going to stick. His own lawyer admits that, with our proof, he's looking at 5 to 8 years, minimum. I read the text, and a strange sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't joy, it wasn't revenge, it was just finality. Marcus was about to pay for what he'd done, and my life could actually begin again. That evening, I drove back to our Gold Coast brownstone, but just to pack my things. The house was mine now, but I couldn't breathe in there. Too many ghosts, too many lies. I'd already tasked my assistant with finding me a new condo in the Loop, closer to the office. When I got there, Caleb was focused on his laptop, his face lit by the screen's glow. The huge television was on, tuned to a finance channel analysing the corporate earthquake at Sterling Financial. And in our top story, the board of Sterling Financial has made a unanimous decision, appointing Isabella Rossi as its new CEO, heralding a new era for the troubled investment giant. A new era. Caleb didn't even look up from his screen, he just smirked. Mom, you're a business icon now. You know you can't go out with bedhead anymore, right? The reporters will be everywhere. I laughed and ruffled his hair. You're ridiculous. Hey, are you busy this weekend? I want to start looking at new apartments. He closed his laptop with a snap and stretched, already handled. I broke into the developer's cloud server for that new tower you like. I've got the floor plans right here, building security systems, parking garage schematics, even their internet service contracts. My son didn't miss a thing. I've already tagged the 3 best penthouse suites for you. All you have to do is pick the view. Is there anything you can't get into? I asked, feeling both proud and slightly terrified. You operate like a spy. Caleb just grinned, wiping his glasses on his t-shirt. When he put them back on, the evening light caught his face, making him seem older, more serious. He was growing up so fast. Mom, what's next? You know, after you save the company. I went to the window, pulling back the heavy velvet curtains. The Chicago skyline was a blanket of glittering lights against the dark sky. The plan is to stabilize the firm, restore its reputation, then hire a professional to manage it. After you graduate, the whole empire is yours if you want it. If not, you can build your own. And after that, I turned back to him, a real smile spreading across my face. I'm going to travel. Then I'm going home to fix up that old farmhouse my grandparents left me in Wisconsin, and I'm going to plant an enormous garden of peonies. Caleb came to stand beside me at the window. We watched the city come alive. Mom, you once told me that I was the best thing you ever built. I was. What do you mean? He held up his phone. The screen showed a new business registration, Rossi Ventures, and listed as the founders were our 2 names. I need to tell you something, he said, and his tone changed completely. It was serious. The best decision I ever made was standing up in that meeting and telling you to take back everything. The name echoed in my mind. My family name. Not a single trace of Sterling anywhere near it. I threw my arms around his neck, fighting back tears. He hugged me back, holding on tight. And outside, the entire city seemed to be glowing just for us. The city was buzzing with life, just as it always did. And for the first time in what felt like forever, so was I.